So we are so excited to be here. Speak and Win delivers Listen and Win, our first inaugural podcast. Try saying inaugural when you've had the Ribena. Right, we are so thrilled to have, we've got Caitlin Pye and we've got Graeme Forrest. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then once we've got the introductions out the way, we'll get into the real, the meat and bones of how they actually beat their fears so they can win in life. So should we go with, let's go with ladies first. Caitlin, let's kick us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, tell us what you do.
I am Caitlin. I am at university at the moment. I do biology, but I've been doing presentations and stuff with Sci for a while now, haven't I? It was, September, October last year we started doing it. And now I take care of the social media as well. And I also work in an aquarium, which is pretty cool. So do a lot of things.
You do loads of presenting, don't you?
I do. Talk to people all the time.
Yeah, little plug for the Blue Plants. She's very used to dealing with large crowds and stuff, aren't you?
And the sharks.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Graeme, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Graeme Forrest. I have known Simon for a long time. Too long. I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I jumped on board to Simon when he told me he was starting Speak and Win. I thought it was a great idea. Yeah, that's me. And
now we've even roped Graeme into presenting. He didn't realise what an amazing presenter he is. But that's a whole story in itself. But just tell us, just before we get into sort of asking you a few questions, guys, about, speaking and fears and stuff like that. Just tell us about your business, Graeme, about how that started.
So my business started probably about 12, 13 years ago. I was a graphic designer for a agency in Manchester. And I was doing a little bit of moonlighting on the side, which I probably shouldn't have been doing. But I was. People used to come to me and ask me for a few little things. And I have to give credit to my now wife, girlfriend at the time, and my father-in-law, who basically said to me, why don't you go freelance and give it a go? No time like the present. And so, yeah, I quit my job, potentially with zero work in the pipeline, to go freelance. And yeah, that was 13.
And now look at you.
Yeah, now look at me. I'm sat on a couch on a podcast.
Really brave step. But now Graeme's got a really thriving business. Stylographic is amazing. So if you've got any graphic design needs, any marketing needs, come and see our Graeme, and
Is it this that they do when they point at the number? Yeah, I'll put the number here, the website.
Here's the link.
He's not even joking. He's going to do that. Caitlin, tell us about tell us about your experience in Scotland and the time you spent
I was just
there.
been chatting about that as well. Well, I finished college and thought I need a break before I go and do my degree and stuff. So I went to Scotland, and on my own, without anyone, no family, friends, nothing. Just went up there on my own. And I started working for PGL, the outdoor education company. Did some incredible things. Like, I can do canoeing, climbing, abseiling, Jacob's Ladder, anything, all those things.
Why Scotland? Just because?
And actually, it wasn't my choice. I signed up to PGL, and you get a choice. You can either pick 3 of your favourite places to go and work, or you can just get sent somewhere. I was like, I don't really care where I go. You can send me anywhere. And they sent me to Scotland, and I had the best time of my life.
You must have had an eye on somewhere on the list.
I didn't pick anywhere, honestly.
Where's the furthest you go?
South France. I did go south of France a little bit as well with them.
Caitlin, how old were you when you went to Scotland to work
I
for
was 18.
So you're 18.
Fresh out of college.
You didn't know anybody.
No.
You're such a brave girl. But now you're basically Speak and Win's answer to Bear Grylls, because you can do all those things, can't you?
Yes, exactly.
Literally. Incredible. You like action girl. Okay, so we've got to know a little bit about you two. I'll introduce myself. So I'm Cy. I'm the MD and founder of Speak and Win, and I've been in personal development for over 20 years. And personal development has always been a passion of mine. The last 7 years I've worked on an NCS contract, which is National Citizen Service. So for the last 5 months for the 2022 summer campaign, I think I've been in 75 schools, looking after 75 schools. What was I thinking? I've driven about 3,000 miles, presented to about 10,500 school leavers face to face in the middle of COVID, and all the barriers that COVID threw up. That was an effort in itself. But we've just got about 1,000 young people secured. So we're really, really pleased that even with all the barriers that COVID threw up, we've managed to get over 1,000 young people secured onto the NCS summer program, which is all about their personal development. So yeah, I set up a company a few years ago, about 4 years ago now. And then I went out on my own and started Speak and Win last year. But really, for Speak and Win, everything that we do, I've sort of been building towards this for about the last 20 years. So Speak and Win, I've thrown in everything. It's like a big melting pot. So all my failures, all my successes from the last 20 years has been thrown into Speak and Win. All my best practice, all my methods, etc. So it really is exciting that we can deliver Speak and Win around the world. And if you want to know more about Speak and Win, have a look at the website. And we'll mention that later when we look at social media and stuff like that. Okay, so there's the introductions out the way. Now we're going to get into the real nitty gritty, because we want our network to share this podcast. It's a free service we're putting out there because we just want to help people, young people and adults, beat their fear of speaking. Now, we'll just start with some stats. 75% of all young people and adults have some level of fear when it comes to talking or speaking in public. When I saw that stat a few years ago, I was really shocked. And that's one of the driving forces to set up the company, because that is insane. But then from my own personal experience, I used to be terrified of speaking, and we'll come to that later.
I don't know about you, but I am now.
I know, yeah.
Well, just with the microphones and everything that's going on, it's like my heart. I can feel my heart pounding. Like, oh,
because we're all being
like this.
pushed
I
up
know,
to
yeah.
our comfort
Because
zone.
it's harder when it's a microphone and when it's just us three sat in a room.
I'm recording
Yeah.
live. So for the three of us, this is really exciting because this is completely unscripted. We've got the only sort of pointers I've given to Caitlin and Graeme is just talk about how you deal with your fear to speak, and also talk about your successes when you've actually built the courage and spoken and had success. So there's a couple of things we're looking at, and then if we have time and we can go into their stories a bit more deeper, we will do. And if we run out of time, we'll do another podcast then sometime soon. So I'm going to start with Graeme.
okay.
Graeme, can you think of a time where you struggled to build your courage to speak and how it affected you? Can you share a time in your life where it's been difficult for you to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I was you've known me for a long time. I was never a very sort of outspoken or outgoing person. I was kind of I'd always be more inclined to observe from the sidelines, and I was never sort of kind of like one of the most louder people in the group. So I suppose as a kid I was more quiet than I am now. I'm a lot more vocal, outspoken and animated now than I was when I was younger. But I think that's obviously come from being in business, having to sort of speak to people who I've never met before. I mean, I've spoken to probably hundreds of people I still never met because I've dealt with them on emails or telephone calls or whatever. But I think sort of the pivotal turning point for me was, I think I'd gone to university. I did something similar to Caitlin. I pushed myself out my comfort zone. So I chose to go to university with nobody I knew in a city that I didn't know.
Wow.
Purely because I knew what I wanted to do in terms of, I wanted to be a graphic designer. I always had dreams of having my own business. And the course that I chose to do was the best course outside of London at the time. So I decided to go to university in Preston, UCLan, shout out to UCLan, doing a graphic design course, because a lot of the graduates from those courses went on to basically be the top designers in the country and work for the big companies down in London. And that was my goal, was to go to London, potentially New York, San Francisco, wherever the work took me, one of the big agencies that had multiple offices. So when I was about 19, my course was a sandwich course. First year, second year, work for a year, come back, graduate. So when you graduate, you've got a year's experience. So I chose in my sandwich year to go to London.
Wow.
Again, to push myself out the comfort zone, and for the fact that all of the big agencies were down there. So yeah, I'd say I was probably about 19, 20, and decided to go to London. And again, I didn't know anyone. I had no idea what I was doing. I felt like I was just completely and utterly winging it. And that's kind of where I learned I need to start being a little bit more believing in me, believing in what I'm saying. And I think a lot of it at the time was probably a bit of rubbish that I was spouting. But someone once said to me, if you say it enough with confidence, people will
say it
believe
with passion,
you.
and they believe you.
Exactly. So
it's so true.
That kind of just always resonated with me in the back of my mind. So I was basically going to these interviews telling them that I was the best in my year, which...
I mean, if it works,
technically
it works.
you were.
To me, I was.
Yeah.
Because I was believing in myself. So yeah, I suppose it was around that age. I was still a little bit wet behind the ears. I was still shy. But if no one had met me before, I was the most confident person because I forced myself to be that person because they didn't know me. Whereas people back home, like yourself, all the people I've grown up with, it was like, that's not Graeme. He's normally the shy, quiet, reserved one.
You were very shy and quiet.
So, and then I think from that moment, it kind of kicked on to being, well, hang on, I don't have to pretend to be this person. I can actually be this person.
Yeah.
And I still am quite shy and reserved in certain circles because there's a lot more overpowering personalities in those circles. But, you can
hold your own.
But yeah,
you can certainly hold your own. You lean into it, Gray. You lean into it, don't you? Right, hold that thought because that's great because you sort of, you're telling us a story there. We're getting both. We're getting to hear about how you deal with your fears and also get your story, which is lovely. 2 for the price of 1. So hold that thought there.
Okay.
We'll go to Caitlin. So Caitlin, can you think of times? Now you said there's a few, so it might be hard for you to pick, but times where you've struggled to find the courage to speak and how that's affected you.
I think there's going to be a running theme here because I think I was very similar to Graeme. I was so shy when I was younger. Wouldn't say boo to a goose at all. Like there's one time in my life I remember this like so specifically. I was in Subway and I was about 8 to be fair to myself, but I couldn't tell them what I wanted and I just stood there and my mum was trying to order hers and obviously I was like just stood there like
couldn't get the words out.
I just couldn't do it. I couldn't
Frozen.
talk. Yeah. And I remember afterwards because mum was like, you go and tell them what drink you want. I'm getting my butty now. Because she ended up ordering my sandwich for me. And I just couldn't tell them what I wanted. So I just stood there and didn't end up getting a drink. So afterwards, mum was like, oh, why have you done that? I've paid for your drink and you've just not got one. Why didn't you just say it? And I feel like that was a moment in my life because I've always remembered it. That I thought, oh, actually, no, I actually need to talk. Like, I can't just stand there and let everyone do this for me.
Okay,
even though I was only young, but...
Caitlin, I think we've got about 3,000 followers on LinkedIn, 3,000 contacts. Now, for our contacts down south, can you just tell them what a butty is? You said you couldn't order a butty. If anyone doesn't know what a butty is, can you just tell them what that is?
It's a sandwich.
It's a sandwich, dear. Okay, yes. Just in case you say, what on earth is a butty? Okay, yeah, it's a sandwich. So
it's a fancy sandwich.
What was it? When you said you froze, why was that? What do you think it was?
I was like that in every situation as a kid. I just couldn't do it. There was just something inside when I just couldn't speak for myself. Like I imagine as a kid, when you're with your mum, it's fine because you just be like, oh, mum, I want this. But the older you get and the more independent you get, like moving up to high school and stuff, you need to start to learn to do these things. And I struggled all the way through high school. It wasn't until I went to college and left and went to Scotland that I actually thought,
well, what type of ways, Caitlin, did you struggle? When you say you struggled through high school, how did you struggle? What did that look like?
I just wouldn't advocate for myself. Like, I wouldn't put myself out there. I just did. I did everything right. Made sure I never stepped a foot out of line. Made sure I didn't upset anyone. Wouldn't say anything. Did what I had to do. But I wouldn't advocate for myself. So if I did something wrong, or someone was like, you've done this wrong, but I thought it was right, I'd be like, yeah. Okay. Right. When I should have been like, no, this is what I've thought, this is how I've done it, which is what I would absolutely do now.
Oh, that's interesting.
But back in the day,
I
couldn't say anything to anyone.
Okay, so bit of a baseline there, isn't there, really? So for Graeme, you talked about how, and we'll come back to that, how you were saying you were quite shy and quiet when you were younger. Caitlin, you're saying you're actually... quite terrified at times, weren't you? And for my experience,
I was going to say, what about you?
Well, yeah, we'll come to me now. So, I, as a young person, I was really fearful about speaking. and especially girls as a young teenager. I couldn't speak to girls. I was terrified. I can remember being 13, going to the church disco. It was at St Austin's on St Mary's Road in Liverpool, if you know it. And there was a big church hall there, and they used to have a disco like once a month, and all the top tunes would be on. And back in the day, it was like the Police and Blondie and Duran Duran, if you like it.
Who were they?
And listen, I know you love that. So they used to have like a tuck shop kind of thing. So because I didn't have the courage to go and speak to this girl that I liked, all I could manage to do was walk as cool as I could. Thought I was the coolest kid, my best kind of Simon Le Bon, walk, whatever it was, and walk over to the tuck shop, order my dandelion and burdock and my 10p mix, and try and catch the eye of this girl that I liked, and then walk off with me dandelion burdock, thinking I was like, a Hollywood A-lister. Because I was so terrified this week. I just couldn't do it. I just didn't have the confidence.
It's such an awful feeling when you're scared as well. It's like there's cold sweats.
Yeah. And then I had a friend in high school, and boy, he could talk to anyone. And he just had the gift of the gab, where he was confident, he was fearless, and he could talk to anyone. And I looked at him and thought, I wish I could be like him, but I just couldn't do it. So again, it was something that I was trying to deal with myself. I suppose one really difficult time I had, if I was looking back to school, was one time that stands out really was I was 14. We're in an English lesson, and I was really, really poor at reading out. I was really poor at reading. I wasn't a great reader when I was a kid. I could read, fine, but reading out loud, I'd never practiced it. So I was actually quite rubbish. And our English teacher was quite difficult. To be diplomatic, he was really hard work. And so he'd go around the class, and I would be literally sweating, bricking it, praying, please do not pick me to read out, because I was good at sport and I had friends, etc. And I was quite sort of confident in myself. But when it came to speaking out loud, that was a bridge too far for me. Okay, Valentine, off you go. Read this piece now. And I started to read this piece, and I was praying, and I was stutter and stumble, and it was absolutely rubbish. Valentine, that's absolutely rubbish. You're a disgrace. You can't even... And he'd absolutely slaughtered me. And I just felt like half a centimetre tall. And I just wanted the earth to open up and swallow me, because I felt so pathetic and ashamed that I couldn't read out, and I felt everyone else could. And so that caused me a bit of trauma, actually.
So do you think that was kind of then like sort of self-fulfilling, because you thought you would stumble and thought that you would not be able to get it out, so therefore when it came to your turn, because I'm pretty sure if no one was in the room, you could have read that out loud, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, I was very similar.
Yeah.
I used to hate reading out loud.
Yeah.
And even now sometimes, like even reading to the kids or reading the newspaper articles to Kate,
Yeah.
I'm starting to flap and panic, thinking I hope I get this out fluently.
Yeah.
I haven't got a problem reading. But
Well, I did what you two did, and I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. And after that horrific experience, it was really traumatic.
Yeah.
And it cast a shadow over me for decades, because I was like, I was in bits over it. I didn't deal with it properly. But I went away and practiced reading out loud, slowly, so that the next time it came, it wouldn't be as bad.
Yeah.
Maybe not as catastrophic, but it would be a bit better. So sort of, early in my teens, there was a massive lack of confidence. Wouldn't speak up. Didn't have the courage to. And I'm going to leave it there now, because I'll come back onto your stories, and I'll come back to me later. So a question I've got for you, Grace. So you've told us a story. You went to London. You pushed yourself out your comfort zone. Now, just to set the scene for our listeners, wherever they might be dotted around the country, hopefully listening to us somewhere in England, maybe they're driving in the car, or they're listening on the radio, or on the AirPods, etc. Now, I can remember you. Now, we must go back, dear me. I reckon, because you were a kid, it used to come to the kids' club that I used to run, the church youth club.
Yep.
And you were a little tiny little thing. But I can remember you as a young lad, really quiet, quite shy. But here's the thing. The Graeme Forrest that we see today, I mean, if you get to know Graeme, he's confident. He's got a great sense of humour, and for me, it's a remarkable turnaround. So, and I would say, especially in the last 10 years, what would you put that down to? I know you've started your own business and that's built your confidence, but can you sort of put your finger on any kind of specific events or things that you've done to build your confidence, especially with your speaking skills? Because that's what we're interested in today. Your speaking skills have gone through the roof. How has that happened, Graeme?
I suppose the honest answer is I don't know. I mean,
it's good for the podcast, isn't
Cool.
it?
Cool. Hang on. Bear with me on this. So I can't specifically say it was because I paid X amount to do a course and it cured me.
Yeah.
I think it's an accumulation of things over time. Without kind of sounding cheesy, I think having the right people around you is definitely a key.
Yeah.
There's people I'm still in touch with, but I'm not as close to anymore. There's new people in my life who I wasn't friends with 15 years ago. But I think that's just natural in life, isn't it? Obviously, you know, it's very rare that you're going to have the same group of friends from, I don't know, say 8 till 80.
Yeah.
You know, people come and go, of course they do. But I think surrounding yourself with people, the right people, realising, I see people as, there's two types of people in the world. You've got your radiators and your drains. I want to be around people.
What an analogy.
I want to be around people who radiate any kind of sort of excellence, happiness, enthusiasm,
good vibes only,
encouragement.
Good vibes only,
exactly.
Great. Yes,
because,
yes, Caitlin.
you know, I don't want to keep churning out phrases.
No, churn them out, mate. We love phrases that speak and win.
My father-in-law always says, birds of a feather flock together, and it's so true. My dad used to say something very similar. If you're around people who are like that, then that's surely got to have some effect on you, because it's going to make you feel better about yourself. It's going to make you realise, I don't need to be so introverted. I can be a little bit more confident in myself. And you got the drains, people who just drain your energy, your time, you know, your passion, always putting you down, aren't happy if you're doing well. You know, I think that's the key for me that was the realisation, realising, hang on a minute, you're no good for me. You know, you're starting to take up a lot of my energy and time, and I'm not getting anything back in return, or I'm not where I should be in the relationship with this. I'm not talking just like as in like boyfriend and girlfriend or in a partner or anything like that. I just mean in terms of like friendships or even professional relationships. If someone's constantly belittling you, and I know it can be difficult if you're in a job role, but being around people who are positive has such a positive impact in your life.
That's a great point.
And I think for me, that is definitely sort of the key element of helping me become who I am today.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with people who are confident, positive, happy when you're doing well, will pick you up when you're not doing well, will give you the confidence back when you're feeling a little bit down, a little bit low. So for me, I'd say that is definitely something that has helped me get to where I am.
No, that's really helpful, Graeme. Before we move on to Caitlin, just to share one experience that I had with Graeme around presenting, and that was I had the opportunity to speak at Graeme's old school, and it's a school where my 5 sons actually went as well, St Margaret's in Liverpool, and Graeme went there, and he hadn't been back to school in an official capacity for, was it, how many years?
I think the last time I was there was when I picked up my level results.
Right,
Genuinely.
So it was, we're going decades. I won't tell you how old he is, but going back decades. But so I did a Q&A with Graeme in front of over 100 school leavers in this massive hall. And again, I've got this memory of Graeme, you know, when he was young and shy. And then it was like a massive transformation. I was really shocked, and I shared this with Graeme after the event, to see him standing there confident, talking about his experience, how he started his business. It was incredible. But again, it's down to all those things that you've just mentioned. But it was amazing to see that transformation. How was it for you? Just before we move on to Caitlin.
Well, the experience at St Margaret's.
Yeah, to go back to your old school. And
do you know what? It was quite. It was definitely something that'll stick with me for a while, because, like I said, I haven't been back to St Margaret's. A lot of change, as in like the building, the shape, and things like that. But as soon as I was back in the school, it's like it was a weird feeling of like being back home. It was almost like where everything began. I always knew, I was quite lucky really, I always knew I wanted to be a graphic designer. Now, what I thought that was when I was in school to what it is now is completely different. However, I always knew I wanted to be, I was always creative. I was always drawing. I was always, I chose art, things like that. And I knew that's what I wanted to go down. So being back there as like a business owner and talking to them about that business was kind of like, it was very, I don't know, almost kind of like closing a chapter. Because I suppose, I don't think any of the teachers were in the hall who were there when I was there, but it was like, they got me to that point.
Yeah.
Whether the school got me to that point.
Yeah.
Obviously I went through the whole school system from year 7 right up to 6th form. And I know I specialised at university in my course, but I got through those 7 years and that got me to where I am today.
Yeah.
Which is funny because when you're kind of in school, you don't really think that far ahead. Well, it might be different now, but when I was there, it was always about getting to the end of the year.
Yeah.
Then it was the next year. Then it was getting to the end of the year. Then it was the next year. And they always used to do this little thing on the computer. I think it was called Kudos, where you put in what you were good at and you did like a little test and it told you what you were projected to be. I was like, I think there was only like 5 answers. It was doctor, teacher, policeman, or police person. I don't know, nurse and something else. There was never like, graphic designer, location scout for a film company, food critic, those, or podcast recorder or social media didn't exist, but it was always kind of like, you're always pigeonholed into being sort of what would be classed back then as the main reputable careers. Yeah. But as I say, fortunately for me, I knew what I wanted to do, but coming back to it and speaking to the kids about, I kind of wanted to say, forget what they're telling you. You can be whatever you want to be. But then I kind of don't want to don't put them off them doing their exams. But it was cool. It was really, really cool to go and do that and to get back into the school.
Oh, it was a lovely experience. It was brilliant to see. Brilliant to see. Thank you for that. Caitlin.
Yes.
So, for Speaking When, you've done some amazing things. You presented to young people, you presented to adults.
Yeah.
You're absolutely fearless. I know you work at the Blue Planet, you present for them, you present to the public. So how have you built your confidence? How have you dealt with the fear? How have you done that?
I feel like it's all come from within. I know what Gra said, it's about the people he's surrounded by. But I think for me it was who I wanted to be. Because I know when I was young and in school, I was the first child, the first, grandchild, first niece, first nephew, first everything. So I obviously had a lot of pressure on me as a kid. Because everyone was like, oh, you can be a doctor, you can be a prime minister, you can king of the world, whatever. But I've never really known what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But that's why it was good that I finished college and went away. Because that was probably the best thing I ever did for myself, just to get away, get out of the town that I lived in with my parents, move away from them, and kind of like learn who you are as a person. And the more confident you are as yourself, the more you can project yourself and talk to other people and just be confident being you to everybody else.
Yeah.
Because...
Well, we all wear different hats, don't we? So I know you wear quite a few hats. So you wear your Blue Planet hat, you've got your Speaking When hat, you've got your university hat, got all kinds of hats you wear. So with regards to, say like for when you were preparing to speak at the Blue Planet, so you're speaking to the public, big groups, parents, children, you've got to be engaging, you've got to entertain, you've got to educate, all these kind of things. As you were preparing to do that, were you fearful about having to speak to the public?
Absolutely, of course.
So how did you get through that? What was that process like?
I think, to be fair, all of my job, I've been very lucky with all of my jobs. Like PGL was working with massive groups of kids and all the teachers and adults that come with them. I was a party host when I was younger as well at like Laser Quest, did their parties. And then I was a teaching assistant as well before I started university. So I've done a lot of things in those kind of environments anyway. So I know how to present myself.
Yeah.
But the aquarium was actually pretty hard because it's a lot of brand new information that I've never known before. When I worked at PGL, we all got trained up first. We couldn't do anything before we were properly trained because it's like dangerous activities. With teaching, like I've been in primary school and high school before, I knew what teaching was like. I knew what schools were going to be like. And I'd passed all my exams, so I knew mostly what I was talking about there. So Blue Planet was a bit different because I've never been in that kind of environment. I'm not a zoologist. I'm not a shark expert. I've had goldfish and killed most of them, so I'm not, I'm not very knowledgeable on that, which made it really hard, actually. So I spent a lot of time. I worked really hard, like finding out all this new information, what I could talk about, and my first show I ever did was absolutely terrible. I can't lie about that one.
So were you nervous terrible when you did it for your first show?
Yeah, I was dead nervous because it's a lot of people, like the whole general public, ages 0 to 100. Yeah. Everybody comes through those doors. Yeah. And a whole loads of new information that I wasn't confident on because it's nothing I'd ever learnt before. So that's really hard to do.
Well, that's really honest of you to say it didn't go well.
Yeah, it didn't go well.
Some people might be a little bit proud or a little bit precious saying, well, I'm brilliant at this.
Of course I'm proud of myself.
That's really honest to say, actually, I stunk out that day.
It was terrible. I mean, we all have off shows. I say this so I'm one of the oldest at the Blue Planet now, and we've had like a load of new people come in and they get really nervous about it. And I said, you're never going to have a perfect show every single time. And it's never going to be the same every single time you talk. Because it's just coming out, isn't it? It's not a planned script. We just go out there and we discuss like sharks, fish.
But I suppose from that first show that you did where you said it was terrible, or did you say it was terrible?
It was terrible.
Okay.
It was terrible.
I wasn't on there, but I know it was terrible. I suppose even if you're just 1% better the next time, it's better. And then it's about sort of like bettering yourself each time, isn't it? So even just that 1% means it's better, and then the next time that 1% is better, and then after like 10 times of doing it, it's 10% better.
Yeah. Well, now I do it with my eyes closed, and it's wonderful every time, even if I say so myself. But that's how you learn, isn't it?
And the more you do it, the more confident you get.
Exactly.
And the more confident you get, the better you do. It's that snowball, isn't it?
No, it's brilliant. It's great to see. Graeme's clearly talked about progression in his life with regards to confidence around speaking. You've talked, been very honest about saying how you stunk the place out. But
I mean, a lot of public speaking times I've been terrible, but you learn and you grow. Yeah, you got to move on.
No, brilliant. I mean, to go back to one of my most difficult and challenging times. So it's a bit ironic, really. So I was struggling to read out English when I was 14. But then a couple of years later, my drama teacher was saying, well, why don't you audition for National Youth Theatre? We'd done a school play. We'd done Greece. And I said,
who were you in Greece?
Well, obviously I was Danny, wasn't I?
Of course.
Well, it was a comedy. We did a massive stand-up. It was like a comedy stroke musical. It was hilarious. If you can find someone who saw the show, it was amazing. So my drama teacher asked me to audition for National Youth Theatre. Anyway, I auditioned, and she was really encouraging. She was, you talk about surrounding yourself with amazing people. Yeah. My drama teacher, Jill Day, she was an incredible lady, and she encouraged so many people. So when she played a huge part in building my confidence around speaking. And so I went from this shy, retiring, quiet, quite introverted, especially vocally, to she really helped build my confidence. Got into the National Youth Theatre, down to London, like you, as a young 17, going down to the Big Smoke. Didn't know anyone, and I was my emotional intelligence was rubbish. I was wet behind the ears. I was like there was a dam of water behind me. I was so wet behind the ears, absolutely hopeless. Emotional intelligence, didn't have a clue. So naive, so immature for 17. Well, I'll just be honest with you. That's what I was. But I was really excited about this amazing experience I was going to have down in London. So anyway, after a couple of years, I mean, there's a few stories I can't share with you, but I'll have to keep them for another podcast. But for example, a couple of years later, we're doing Romeo and Juliet in the West End. 19, got A-level students paying to come and see me do Shakespeare. Now, I was struggling to speak English at the time. Never mind, you do Shakespeare. It's like a foreign language, isn't it?
It is.
But I can remember standing at the side of the wings and being absolutely terrified. 1, could I remember the lines? 2, could I actually get them out? 3, could I remember, where you call it blocking an actor, where am I meant to stand, etc. And I was in absolute bits. I can honestly say I was literally terrified. But like your experience, Caitlin, and to start with, I believe I was quite poor, absolutely rubbish. But it's just through repetition and practice that built my confidence, and I kept going. I didn't give up. And I know my first few performances were absolutely shocking. And they weren't a good level at all, but eventually progressed, did really well, and ended up getting some lead roles. And we actually, I got picked to go to Barcelona. I got a lead role in Barcelona. We had an absolute ball. But National Youth Theatre was where I met Danny Craig, Mr. 007. So
if you're listening, Daniel,
just Daniel, yeah. Daniel, how are you, Danny? You've done really well, mate. I could have been a stuntman, but like Danny Craig in the National Youth Theatre, his confidence was through the roof. I don't think I've ever met a more confident person. And I can remember as a 17-year-old, he was the first person I met. Because my drama teacher who I mentioned, who asked me to audition, was best mates with his mum. And she was head of the Wirral Youth Theatre. So they arranged for me and Danny Craig to meet up. So we meet up down in London. And we're doing all these vocal exercises, etc. Trying to, and the director's trying to build our confidence and help us become more eloquent and etc. And he's just smashing it. He was like a 35-year-old Shakespearean actor, someone who worked, who like tread the boards at the National Theatre. And I'm thinking, who is this guy? Because comparing him to me, it was night and day. It was insane. So he was at such an advanced level for 17-year-old. Very fortunate guy. And it was no shock to me when I went on to see, how successful he was. Incredible, and he deserves all the success he's had because he's worked really hard.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think it's naturally some people are born with the gift of being confident without being arrogant as well.
Yeah,
I think that's important, isn't it? That there is like a level of just generally being naturally confident without the arrogance as well. But I think, like you just said there, so there's you and him. Now you're there and he's there, so you're both there on merit because you've auditioned, but you can see there's a stark contrast.
Oh, it was like, Ronaldo versus like an under-9 player for some local kids. It was ridiculous.
Do you think if you went back now, you'd be more confident, you'd be better?
Well, I am more confident now, but it's been decades and decades of working on my fears. I mean, back in the day, I was terrified to speak. Now I stand up in front of hundreds of people. I spoke to tens of thousands of people and don't bat an eyelid, and I love it, and I'm at home there. But that's an incredible turnaround. But like Graeme said, like you said, we've had to work at it. And so what I would say is just to give some advice to our podcast listeners listening to our inaugural Listen and Win. Thanks, Graeme, for that one. Brilliant name. I would just say, if you are struggling with speaking in public or doing a presentation, or you're fearful, it's about repetition. It's about practice. If you practice and practice and practice, and Graeme said the same thing, Caitlin and myself, if you practice, if you work at it, repetition, that is how you beat your fear. That is how you reduce your anxiety. It only comes through repetition and practice. There's no high-tech way to do it. There's no app you can get on your phone.
I wish there was.
I promise you, there isn't. It's just down to good old-fashioned practice and repetition. There's nothing high-tech you can do to build your confidence. It's just about going through it, stinking it out, like Caitlin said before, being rubbish, but, being honest with yourself to say, okay, I'm going to fail to start with, and we'll talk about failure in the next few podcasts. You have to be bad to get good. You do. And to just take it on the chin. But if you push on, if you practice and repeat, eventually you will get there. The anxiety will subside.
I think there's a good practice ground as well where you can practice that without sort of putting anything at risk. Now, I know you have done this. Have you done volunteering?
Yeah, loads.
Exactly. So have I. So I think volunteering has definitely been a massive key for me. No matter what you volunteer to do. I've volunteered to do all kinds of mad things. I'm not looking for any praise, but I just mean it doesn't matter what sector you volunteer, because you're doing it for free. You're doing it because you're trying to help someone or something or an organisation or whatever it might be. Now, you can't fail there because you're doing it for nothing. So they just appreciate the fact that you are even there.
True.
Yeah.
So that, even if maybe you never speak to anyone, or even if you just by your presence being there is helpful, is irrelevant. But I think being able to volunteer, putting yourself in a situation whereby, well, actually, I'm going to do this out of the goodness of my heart because, I want to help. There's more to it than just actually volunteering. It's helping you develop self not self-involvement. What's the word I'm looking for? Self-investment.
Yes.
So you're investing in yourself.
Yeah.
I just think for me, looking back over the years, whether it been helping you with the youth clubs, or whether it been like, you know, building a house in Romania, going on like sort of the football trips that we've been on in the past, doing coaching with orphans, things like that. It's just it's invaluable to help develop you as a person.
No, it's a great point, because at the end of most speaking wins, at the end of presentations with the NCS contract, I will always say the best thing you can do to build your confidence, the best thing you can do to improve your speaking skills is go and volunteer. Anywhere you like, as long as it's legal, as long as it's safe. I don't care where it is, what it is, just go and volunteer. Because volunteering to especially to young people is quite alien.
It is.
And NCS are great at promoting that. It's great to promote the volunteer ethic. But you know, that is a really good point.
I think as well, the society we live in, you've almost got to be perfect first time at things.
Yeah, that is true.
Because it's getting worse, especially with social media, which obviously we're trying to push as well. But you know, you look now, and if you're not good at something first off the bat, you're not good at it. But that's not necessarily true. You know, especially if you see something on social media, or if you see something on the telly, they could have had like 600 tries before it was successful, whether it be business.
They probably have as well.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Or like, so I think, I don't know. There's more to it than just having a go and not being good at it.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's repetition.
Repetition, practice is definitely the key. Right, time has caught up with us. So I must say a massive thank you to Graeme and Caitlin, our first inaugural, I can just about get it out, our inaugural Listen and Win from the amazing Speak and Win UK. It's been amazing. We hope that today has helped you. We're going to record loads more of these podcasts. We've got a massive list of people that we're going to bring in to interview, and hopefully they will share how they build the courage to speak so they can win in life. And now I'm going to ask Caitlin and Gra to finish off, and they're going to tell you about our social media and how you can get involved with Speak and Win.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please remember to follow us on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all of those things.